So I'll start with I cracked the code. Like it's not related to my talk. It's just like don't book cabs in Bangalore. It's like get your own. So you'll have more traffic. So to start with, how many of you use Microsoft apps, Outlook, or like Teams? Oh, there are a couple of them. So you are gonna relate some of the components that I saw today when you go back to work on Monday. So we all know that we have been using React Native to ship cross-platform experiences, especially on Android and iOS, and also on web as well. What if we can extend this platform and bring it to more platforms, like desktop platform like Mac and Windows? We have been doing a lot of things at Microsoft. We have been doing a lot of things at Microsoft that we are open sourcing and we are sharing with the community, and my talk is all about that. Moving on, I am software engineer at Microsoft. I currently work with Fluent Design System team, where I build component library for React Native, which is again cross-platform. And I am also part of React Native platform teams, where we deal with hosting of brownfield experiences in many of the React Native apps. I go by this Twitter handle on. I go by this handle on Twitter. Feel free to connect. We can talk more. So let's get started from the base. Like we have React Native. We ship React Native on 2 platforms, or maybe web with these 2 platforms as well, Android and iOS. So what you need to do, you just go and run this awesome command, and it will scaffold you a React Native project, all running on iOS and all running on Android as well. Let's go ahead and make a quick change and see how it reacts. Now, let's add a text, and let's say hello React Nexus example. And when you save it, you go back to your iOS app. It says that, and when you do it, it go back to Android app, and it does that, right? All good, nothing rocket science. Let's move on. It's all start with a question. Everything was going great, and there was one question, and that question was, what if we have these 2 experiences on Android and iOS, and what if we could bring this on desktop platform as well from the same shared code base? Of course, there are few things that we can't share. There are per platform files for that. There are per platform handling for that. But most of the code is shared. So we planned to bring this iOS and Android code to these 2 particular platforms, macOS and Windows. So what we did was, as a part of initiative at Microsoft, we call it React Native for desktop. We brought these 2 particular libraries or frameworks, you can say. It's called React Native for macOS and React Native for Windows. It's all open source on GitHub. Feel free to come and contribute or have any suggestion. Feel free to come and say. So React Native is fork of Facebook React Native, aka Meta now, and it's purely built native. It's not Skia. It's not web views. It's purely built native on top of AppKit, which is equivalent of UIKit on iOS. So you get natural looking components as well. Let's try it out. Let's go to our website that we have. That what you can do is you can just go to your project and run this magical command npx React Native macOS init in your same code base that you have. Once you run that, it scaffolds a new folder in your project known as macOS. Just like Android, iOS, it gives a new folder like macOS, and it installs all the dependency out there. And the workflow is almost same as iOS. So you don't need to we need to make the developer experience same for like iOS and macOS to have a consistent developer experience. And it handles all the things. So you do pod install, and it again install all the dependency. After it scaffolds the project, it gives a magical command that is run macOS. So once you go ahead and run that in your terminal, once the project scaffolds, it will start building your macOS project. And once you run it, start building nothing. You don't need to go to any native site. You just run it from your terminal, and it's give you a macOS that looks something like this. It loads from the Metro server, same Metro server, and this comes from the same code base, right? And if you see, this runs on iOS and Android as well, and it feels very natural. It's a native app, right? So let's go ahead and make a quick change and see how it reacts to our change. So we'll add, let's say we have macOS now, right? And I go back to my changes and see my changes. We see our changes. So hot reloading work, everything works, right? We see that change in iOS, and we see that change in Android as well. So we have macOS now, right? What next? Windows, yes, we have that as well. So you go to same website, we have kept the command consistent again. If you have a very, very new project, what you can do is you can scaffold it from the beginning, or you can just do one thing. You can go, run the same command that we have that will scaffold a Windows folder in your same project. You run this npx react native init command, which is scaffold, and you run this react native run Windows command just like other platforms, and it will start a Windows application. Let's go ahead and look into that, how it looks. So you run the same command on your terminal, React Native, Windows init. It will scaffold everything, handle all the native dependencies, bring out everything on a Windows folder that we get. So in your project, we'll have a new folder known as Windows. Once you run it, it will look something like this. It loads a bundle from, say, the same Metro server that comes like for Android, iOS, and macOS, and you'll get this Windows application running as well from the same code base. So we have like 4 things now: Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. Yeah. So now, what happens, this is what we have been doing at Microsoft, and for our business use case, it has been working great, right? But once I tried it on web, the next one is like my personal experience. We don't use it in production right now, React Native Web, but we only use Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. But I tried it in web to make it work, and let's see how it went. So for web, things work a bit differently, and for web, the bundler needs to change, and there are some dependencies that needs to be added. As Sankar said, we have React Native Web community package that we install that brings React Native to web. We install that. We install some Babel plugin to transform our JSX. We install that as well, and we bring Webpack and Webpack loaders as a dev dependency in our project, so that we can load our bundle using Webpack server, right? So once you install that, all come in our project. Now what you need to do is you need to add a Webpack config. Internals of this already demonstrated by Nitin. You can check it out. But mostly what we do, we put in a root file in index.html where we put a root tag where we'll inject our React Native app. You can include some package files that what you are going to include, like per platform files and all. So this is how like the root tag looks, and here is the place where we are going to inject our React Native app, right? Lastly, we go to index.js file, the entry point, and we mention like how we are going to handle the web platform differently. For example, if you see here, it's just telling that this is my root folder, and you go and inject the React Native app there. Lastly, once you run this command known as yarn web, so we have already added a script in our package.json file. Once you run that, what it will do is it will start your Webpack, and this will give you a little URL that you can run and see your React Native app. So now, if you go to browser and go to this URL, you see the web app running, and this comes from the same code base again. So you have like 5 things now: Android, iOS, macOS, Windows, and web as well. But if you see, this right now runs on all of them, like Android, iOS, macOS, and web as well. Since I was recording this on like Windows, I could not like bring that here, but I showed it before, right? So if you make any change, again, like hot reloading, everything works. I made a change and went to my app. You can see that the hot reloading works. I can see it on iOS, Android, my macOS app as well, and yeah, probably like web as well. So we have like shared code base for like 5 platforms from the one single shared code base. But there are a lot of things that needs to be handled per platform. Everything doesn't work in its own. So there are a lot of like, for example, shadows work differently in Android and iOS, right? So that kind of thing needs to be handled manually. Next question, what did you learn? Like, is this production ready? So if you go back to work on Monday and say like, can I try it out? Yes, of course. Like, the question is like, is it production ready? If you use Windows, this is the start menu in Windows 11. And a quick question, like, can you differentiate the parts which are built on React Native? So we do brownfield hosting. Can you just like, quick question, can anybody can differentiate like which parts are built on React Native? No, right? It's probably a bit difficult, because this means like we have done our job very well. Like we have hosted this part of React Native in a native, and it looks and feels very, very natural. It's very hard to differentiate. Now, you say that this was Windows, but what do you do for shipping cross-platform that we saw? So let's start with an example that is one of the most used React Native experiences in Office apps. We call it Live Persona Card, LPC. If you go to Word app, this is our Word app, and Word Android app specifically, you go to View Profile, you open these experiences. This experience is known as LPC, and it is all in React Native. If you see the look and feel, you see here, it's all look like Android, the button, the color, and the look and feel for file system and hierarchy, text, everything is catered to Android platform, right? Now, this is our Android app, so we wanted to bring it same to other platforms as well, right? This is how we do. So this is in production. This is present in Outlook, Web Excel, PowerPoint, and Teams as well. So this is present in all of them. This is on Windows, this is on Mac OS, this is on iOS, and this is on Android. There are few changes that you see. If you see the Mac OS one, there are rounded corners, and if you see the mobile platform, you see like the back button is usually present in mobile platform, but on Windows and Mac OS platform, it behaves differently. But most of the code is shared, and logic, business logic is entirely mostly shared. So there are some checks that we put for especially handling the per platform changes. To conclude my talk, I would like to quote this that one of my coworkers said in Chain React conference this year. Lorenzo, he's a React Native releaser right now, and he said like React Native is one of the safest bets in the entire open source ecosystem space, right? And I kind of relate to that. If you see React Native in 2017 or 18, and if you see React Native today, what it is, it has evolved a lot. There are a lot of tools, libraries, frameworks that have came in that can make our workflow very, very easy, right? So it's all about community. So that's why what we are doing is we are open sourcing as much as we can. So there are certain tools we have open source and we are contributing to it that can make your use case a bit more easier. We have Fluent UI React Native, that is a cross-platform component library in React Native, and it works on Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac OS. So we have been using this library to ship components in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook as well. So this also goes on desktop. And next one is React Native Test App. So when you're building experience, you can't always go to your native app and test it, right? You build something on isolation as well. So what we do is we have a React Native Test App, we scaffold our project and install this NPM package. This handles all the native dependency. So for example, you are upgrading from 068 to 70, right? So you need to go to upgrade helper and you need to see all the native changes what you want to upgrade, but this handles all of them. You just mention that you want 071 version of React Native, run the commands, and it does it all well. Last one is kind of my personal favorite, and this is one of the most heavily used package inside Microsoft as well. And this has one of the package that brought tree shaking a feature in Metro. So right now we have been using that to reduce our bundle size, and it's working great for us. You can go to this repos, put any suggestion out there, and we'll happy to help and build out their features for you. So to conclude, there are few talks that my team gave, build on some internals, and I can scan this, you can download this slide and look out some resources. If you have anything, you can just reach me out on Twitter or GitHub, most probably for PRs and anything. And that's it from my side. Thanks for staying by, and I'll see you around.